Sometimes the loudest moment in football isn't the crowd, the scoreboard, or even the touchdown itself. Sometimes it's what doesn't happen afterward. No celebration explosion, no chest bumps, no pure joy, just a strange pause that makes everyone watching lean closer to their screen. That's exactly what happened after Shedeur Sanders launched a perfect 60-yard strike that should have sent the entire stadium into a frenzy. The ball traveled clean, the timing was flawless, and the result was undeniable, 6 points just like that. But instead of unity, fans noticed something else. Something felt off. Within seconds, social media lit up. Clips were replayed. Screenshots froze on facial expressions. People weren't arguing about the throw, they were questioning the reaction. Why did the moment feel tense instead of electric? Why did the energy seem uneven after such a massive play? At first, it looked like nothing. Just another touchdown, just another broadcast cutaway. But the more people looked, the more this moment started to feel like a window into something deeper. Because when a young quarterback delivers under pressure, it usually brings a team together. And when it doesn't, that's when questions start forming. Fans began connecting dots. Earlier sideline moments, body language during drives, missed connections that didn't make the highlight reels. And suddenly, this single touchdown wasn't just a score, it became a symbol of a locker room still figuring itself out. What made the moment even more intriguing was how Shedeur handled it. No visible frustration, no pointing fingers, no public reaction at all. Just calm composure, the kind that doesn't demand attention but quietly earns it. And that contrast only made the situation more noticeable. Because on one side, you had a quarterback trying to build trust snap by snap. On the other, a receiver whose reactions sparked debate instead of celebration. And hovering over it all was a coaching staff that many fans believe should have stepped in long before things reached this point. This wasn't about one play. It wasn't even about one player. It was about leadership, adjustment, and the uncomfortable moments that happen when roles begin to shift. And once you understand what led up to that throw and what followed, the reaction suddenly makes a lot more sense. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to stay locked in on all the latest NFL drama, make sure you hit that like button. It helps the video reach more people who love this content just like you. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another update, reaction, or storyline as it unfolds in real time. I also want to hear from you in the comments. What do you think about Shedeur Sanders' performance and the Browns' collapse? Drop your thoughts below and let's talk about it. And don't forget to share this video with friends who follow the NFL. Your support truly keeps the channel moving forward. And that's where the story really begins. The throw itself was impossible to ignore. A clean release, perfect timing, and placement that left no room for error. Shedeur didn't just throw the ball, he anticipated the window before it even fully opened. Under pressure, he trusted his read and let it fly. This wasn't a bailout throw. This wasn't a lucky break. This was a quarterback playing ahead of the defense, delivering the kind of pass that changes momentum instantly. And for a team searching for offensive identity, it should have been a unifying moment. But fans noticed something strange almost immediately. As the play ended, the focus shifted away from the scoreboard and toward the sideline. Cameras caught a reaction that didn't match the moment. Instead of excitement, there was restraint. Instead of joy, there was something closer to discomfort. That's when the conversation started. Not from analysts, not from commentators, but from viewers. People replayed the clip, slowed it down, and asked the same question. Why didn't this feel like a celebration? It's important to be clear here. A player's reaction doesn't automatically mean conflict. Not every athlete celebrates the same way, but in football, context matters, and this moment didn't exist in isolation. The energy shift after the touchdown stood out because the play itself demanded a response. Big plays usually release tension. This one seemed to expose it. Meanwhile, Shedeur's demeanor never changed. No visible frustration, no expectation of acknowledgement. He went straight back to business, like the job wasn't finished yet, and that calm only amplified the contrast. Fans didn't interpret this as arrogance. If anything, many saw it as maturity. A quarterback who understands that leadership isn't loud, it's consistent. But when a play this big doesn't lift everyone the same way, it forces people to look closer. And once they did, they realized this moment was tied to something that happened earlier. Something that had already planted doubt. The internet has a way of turning small moments into massive conversations, especially when emotions are already involved. Within minutes, fans began posting side-by-side clips, comparing reactions, questioning energy, and offering their own interpretations. Some suggested the reaction showed frustration. Others believed it reflected discomfort with changing roles. And many were careful to frame it as speculation, not accusation. Because at this level, perception can be just as powerful as reality. What fueled the discussion wasn't just the reaction itself, but the timing. This wasn't early preseason. This wasn't a meaningless snap. This was a moment where a young quarterback delivered under pressure, the exact situation where unity usually shows itself naturally. Body language became the focal point. Fans pointed out how receivers typically respond after long touchdowns. The excitement, the release, the acknowledgement of trust between quarterback and target. And when those things appear muted, people notice. Still, many emphasized that reactions don't always tell the full story. Emotions in-game can be complicated. But what made this moment harder to dismiss was that it aligned with earlier tension that viewers had already picked up on. This wasn't the first time people felt the connection looked strained. It was simply the most visible example. And once that door opened, fans began revisiting everything that led up to it. Which brought attention back to the sideline. Earlier in the game, cameras captured a sideline exchange that immediately caught attention. No audio was needed. The body language told enough of the story to spark speculation. Reports and fan breakdowns suggested frustration over route execution and timing. Whether that interpretation was accurate or not, the visual stuck. Because it showed tension at a moment when alignment matters most. What stood out wasn't the disagreement, those happen every game. It was how differently each side handled it. Shedeur remained composed, listening, responding without escalation. No theatrics, no outward frustration. That reaction resonated with viewers. Many interpreted it as leadership under pressure. A quarterback choosing stability over emotion. And when that same quarterback later delivered a flawless throw, the contrast became impossible to ignore. Fans began suggesting that the touchdown reaction wasn't about the play, it was about what came before it. A continuation of unresolved frustration rather than a response to success. Again, none of this was proven. But the narrative took shape because the moments lined up too cleanly to ignore. And once fans began choosing sides, the discussion shifted from a single play to mindset. Which raised a bigger question. At the heart of this team's story is a collision of mindsets. On one side, there's Shedeur Sanders, calm, methodical, and relentlessly disciplined. On the other, Jeudy, talented, flashy, and still adjusting to accountability at this level. And when those two approaches meet on the field, the tension is almost tangible. Shedeur isn't just a quarterback who throws well under pressure. He's a player obsessed with trust and timing. He wants his receivers to be exactly where they should be, at exactly the right moment, every single snap. It's not about ego or who gets the spotlight or how many flashy moves you can make. It's about building chemistry that lasts, read after read, play after play. And fans have noticed, this is a quarterback who studies footwork, locks eyes with teammates, and commits to knowing the game plan better than anyone else on the field. That level of focus doesn't just happen overnight. It comes from preparation, mentorship, and a mentality that refuses to settle for mediocrity. Then there's Jeudy, an undeniably skilled receiver, the kind every quarterback dreams about throwing to. But along with his talent comes inconsistency. Some plays are magic, others confusing. Some days he looks unstoppable, other days he struggles to stay in sync with timing and positioning. And when a quarterback like Shedeur demands precision, Jeudy is suddenly in a position he isn't fully used to, one that requires accountability at a higher level than he's been forced to face before. This isn't about personal animosity, it's about philosophy. Shedeur thrives on structure. Jeudy, until now, has thrived on freedom, the ability to make instinctive reads, to improvise, to chase highlight reel moments. But football is a team sport, and in this offense, precision isn't optional. Every route, every timing window, every foot placement matters. Fans have speculated that Jeudy's subtle frustration, the body language, the sideline expressions, the occasional missteps, isn't about Shedeur personally, but about adjusting to a QB who refuses to let errors slide. The collision becomes even clearer when you watch them on consecutive plays. Shedeur executes with near-perfect timing, trusting that his receivers are where they should be. Jeudy sometimes delivers, sometimes hesitates. That hesitation creates a ripple effect. Pressure builds, chemistry wavers, and suddenly what looks like a single misstep on one route becomes a magnified reflection of a broader clash of approaches. But here, the key takeaway. This isn't a problem Shedeur created. It's the natural consequence of a young quarterback holding the team to a higher standard. And it's the kind of tension that, when handled right, can elevate a player like Jeudy, forcing him to adapt, improve, and ultimately become part of a more disciplined, reliable unit. So when fans notice that odd reaction after a touchdown, or a sideline glance that seems off, it's not drama for drama's sake. It's the visible friction of two different mindsets trying to coexist. And if Jeudy can adjust to the structure Shedeur is demanding, this collision could transform into a partnership that elevates the entire offense. Until then, every pass, every route, and every glance on the sideline tells part of the story. Sometimes, numbers tell part of the story, but perception tells another. And in the case of Shedeur Sanders and Jerry Jeudy, both have played starring roles, just in very different ways. The 60-yard touchdown wasn't just a highlight, it was the longest catch of the season for Jeudy. Fans immediately noticed. It was the kind of play that should have erased doubts, at least for a moment. Yet the reaction didn't match the magnitude of the achievement. That discrepancy is what drove so much discussion online. Shedeur's recent stretch of games tells its own story. Week after week, he's delivered under pressure, showing a level of calm and command that is rare for a young quarterback. Multiple touchdown games, precise timing, quick decisions, leadership that isn't loud but instantly recognizable to anyone paying attention. Every throw seems calculated to build trust, not just to rack up stats. And that's where performance and perception begin to diverge. Jeudy, on the other hand, has a reputation for flashes of brilliance mixed with moments of inconsistency. Drops, mistimed routes, occasional lapses that frustrate both teammates and fans. The touchdown showcased his potential, but it also highlighted the contrast. One play of perfection versus weeks of uneven execution. And in football, perception often weighs heavier than a single highlight. Fans don't just see the stat line, they see body language, effort, and how a player reacts in moments that test chemistry. This is where the narrative really builds tension. Fans began connecting the dots, a quarterback growing steadily, a receiver adjusting, a coach hovering but not fully solving the problem. The perception became that Shedeur is carrying the offense with consistency and composure, while Jeudy is still finding his place within the system. And that perception influences every conversation, every fan forum, and every highlight replay. But it's not all criticism. Some fans emphasize that this contrast can be positive. Friction can lead to growth. It can push Jeudy to elevate his consistency to match the quarterback's precision. The perception of tension, after all, isn't proof of failure. It's proof of adjustment. And football is a game of adjustments at every level. What makes this especially compelling is that performance on the field and perception off it are rarely aligned perfectly. One great play doesn't erase previous struggles, but it does reveal potential. One consistent QB doesn't guarantee team harmony, but it does establish a foundation. And when those two realities collide, the result is the kind of drama that fuels social media debates, locker room chatter, and fan speculation for weeks. The takeaway is clear. While stats can be impressive, perception drives narrative. Shedeur's consistent growth and calm under pressure are reshaping how fans view leadership in the Browns' offense. Jeudy's flashes remind everyone of his talent, but the perception of inconsistency keeps questions alive. And that tension between performance and perception is exactly what makes this story so fascinating to watch, week after week. What separates a good quarterback from a true leader isn't just the throws he makes or the points he racks up. It's the way he communicates, the way he builds trust, and the way he sets expectations without making it personal. Shedeur Sanders has shown all of that quietly, consistently, and in a way that fans are starting to notice. After the touchdown and the sideline tension, Shedeur didn't call anyone out. He didn't make headlines with blame or dramatics. Instead, he spoke about trust, about timing, and about the importance of chemistry with every player on the field. He emphasized looking teammates in the eyes, knowing they'd be where they were supposed to be, and committing to being exactly where he needed to be as a quarterback. Every statement carried an underlying message. Leadership is earned through preparation, accountability, and respect. What makes this approach remarkable is how deliberate it is. Fans immediately recognized that Shedeur's words weren't just about football mechanics. They were about building a culture. A quarterback who can throw accurately is valuable, but a quarterback who can hold everyone to a higher standard without creating resentment, that's rare. And Shedeur is demonstrating that kind of maturity at just the start of his career. He also talked about his dad's influence, and the insight here is key. Having Coach Prime as a mentor is more than just having someone in your corner. It's having a voice that demands excellence, even in moments of pressure. Shedeur acknowledged that his dad's expectations push him to be better every snap. That guidance, coupled with his own discipline, has shaped him into a quarterback who can handle both performance pressure and interpersonal dynamics on a team. The beauty of this is subtle. Shedeur doesn't broadcast his leadership for recognition. He builds trust quietly, ensuring everyone on the field knows their role and can rely on each other. That trust translates directly into execution. When the ball is in his hands, he can make decisions quickly, knowing his teammates are aligned. And fans can see the difference. It's the calm in the storm, the composure when chaos is all around, and the consistency that builds confidence not just for himself, but for the entire team. Meanwhile, observers are comparing his approach to what's happening with his receivers. Jeudy's adjustments, his reactions, and his growth are now being measured against Shedeur's quiet but firm standard. Fans are nodding that the quarterback's words and actions are setting a bar that doesn't just demand effort, it demands accountability. And that accountability is starting to redefine expectations on the Browns' offense. At the end of the day, Shedeur's voice isn't loud, but it's impactful. Every statement about trust, every reference to preparation, every emphasis on chemistry tells a story. This is a quarterback who leads by example, who earns respect without theatrics, and who understands that leadership isn't about ego, it's about consistency, vision, and a quiet command that changes the dynamic of a team. And in the context of this season, after the touchdown, the sideline tension, and the online debates, Shedeur's words do more than explain his mindset. They explain why he's emerging as the true backbone of the Browns' offense. Once the dust settles from the play itself, and once the spotlight shifts away from individual reactions, the conversation inevitably moves to the one place fans always end up looking, the coaching staff. Because when tension shows up repeatedly on the field, people start asking whether it's really a player problem or a structure problem. Kevin Stefanski's name has been at the center of that discussion, not because of one bad call or one bad game, but because of a pattern that fans believe has allowed confusion to linger longer than it should. Throughout the season, there's been an ongoing debate about offensive identity, quarterback stability, and how clearly expectations are being communicated across the roster. Many fans point out that young quarterbacks need protection, not just physically, but organizationally. They need clarity, consistency, a system that doesn't change week to week. And while Shedeur has handled instability with impressive maturity, viewers are questioning whether he should have to do that much heavy lifting this early. The perception, fair or not, is that Shedeur has been forced into a leadership role because the structure around him hasn't fully locked in yet. When route timing breaks down, when sideline frustration becomes visible, or when chemistry looks shaky, fans often trace it back to coaching. Not as an accusation, but as a responsibility. Some speculate that earlier quarterback decisions created ripple effects that are still being felt. Others believe that veterans were given too much freedom in the past, making it harder to adjust to a quarterback who demands precision now. And when those adjustments aren't reinforced clearly from the top, friction becomes inevitable. What stands out is how little visible intervention there appears to be in moments of tension. Instead of immediate recalibration, fans feel like they're watching issues play out in real time on the field. That leaves room for speculation, narratives, and divided opinions, none of which help a young offense find its footing. At the same time, it's impossible to ignore that Stefanski isn't the one missing throws or running routes. Coaching influence is indirect, but it's powerful. It sets the tone. It defines the margin for error. And when that tone isn't crystal clear, players start interpreting expectations differently. This is where the coaching question becomes less about blame and more about opportunity. Fans aren't calling for chaos. They're calling for alignment. For an offense built around timing, trust, and consistency, the same things Shedeur keeps emphasizing publicly. Because right now, it looks like Shedeur is setting standards from the inside, while the coaching staff is still adjusting from the outside. And that imbalance is risky. Young quarterbacks can lead, but they shouldn't have to stabilize an entire system alone. If Stefanski leans into what's working, builds around Shedeur's strengths, reinforces accountability across the board, and clarifies roles, this tension could fade quickly. But if uncertainty lingers, moments like that touchdown reaction won't disappear. They'll multiply. And that's why fans aren't just watching the players anymore. They're watching the sideline, waiting to see whether the structure finally catches up to the quarterback who's already stepping into the future. When everything is stripped away, the highlight reels, the reactions, the online debates, this moment wasn't really about a touchdown. It was about timing, not just on the field, but within the team itself. A snapshot of a group still learning how to move together while expectations are quietly shifting. Shedeur Sanders didn't demand attention that night. He didn't celebrate loudly. He didn't make the moment about himself. And that's exactly why so many fans walked away feeling like they just watched a leadership transition happen in real time. Not announced, not forced, just revealed. For Jeudy, this moment doesn't define failure. It defines a crossroads. Talent has never been the question. The real question is adjustment. Can he fully buy into a system built on precision, timing, and accountability? Or will the friction fans are noticing continue to surface in subtle ways, body language, chemistry, missed connections that don't always show up in the stats sheet? What makes this situation so compelling is that it's still unresolved. There's no villain, no clear winner, just a young quarterback setting standards, a veteran receiver being challenged by them, and a coaching staff that now has to decide how firmly it wants to define the team's identity. Because moments like this don't disappear. They either fade as chemistry improves, or they grow louder when clarity never arrives. And the difference between those two outcomes usually comes down to structure. Alignment. Clear expectations reinforced at every level. Shedeur has already shown what kind of leader he intends to be. Calm, accountable, prepared. The kind of quarterback who builds trust through consistency rather than noise. And when players like that emerge, teams usually face a choice: adjust around them or slow them down with uncertainty. Fans are watching closely now, not just for touchdowns, but for reactions, not just for stats, but for energy. Every snap becomes part of a larger story about where this team is headed and who it's willing to follow. This single play opened a door, not to controversy, but to truth. It showed how far Shedeur has come, how much adjustment still remains, and how thin the line is between potential and cohesion. The next few games won't just test talent, they'll test alignment. And that's why this moment matters. Because years from now, it might not be remembered as just a long touchdown. It might be remembered as the point where leadership stopped being theoretical and started becoming real. Now the only question left is simple. Will everyone else move with it or get left behind?
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.